So what has been the Indian response? The Indian response to the Pakistani viewpoint is that there can be no compromise on the sovereignty of Kashmir. Indian viewpoint is Kashmir decided to be a part of India with the wishes of the people in 1947. And if at all Pakistan wants to talk with India on Kashmir, they will have to forego the territory which they occupied during the incursion in 1947. As Atif mentioned, there's a part of Kashmir which is often referred to as Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And Pakistan will have to vacate the territory for any talks on Kashmir to be held, if at all. But primarily, we Indians look at Kashmir as an integral part of India. Any issues in Kashmir, it's an internal matter of India. No other country, and Atif mentioned a number of countries which have recently become, which have separated from their prior homeland. But none of these countries have seen the kind of violence and bloodshed India has seen in the last 60 years. And that too because of the interference from an external neighbor. Look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has had a very similar history in terms of the violence, particularly in the last 20 years. Again, Sri Lanka, they don't go as far as India have gone in this regard. But the problem which Sri Lanka faced is very similar to the problem which India is facing in Kashmir. Tamilians, who are a significant part of Sri Lanka, are basically an Indian, they're basically of an Indian ethnicity. It would have been very easy for the Indian government to interfere in Sri Lanka and stoke the Tamil militant groups there and create trouble, just like Pakistan has been doing for the last 60 years. In fact, 1989, the Indian government sent its army to support the Sri Lankan government to fight the Tamil militants. I just pointed this out to highlight the difference between how Pakistan looks at the internal matters of another country vis-a-vis how India looks at the internal matters of another country. So as far as we are concerned, Pakistan really should not concern itself with what's happening in Kashmir. We really cannot compromise on the sovereignty of Kashmir. Kashmir, as far as we are concerned, is not a disputed territory, it's an integral part of India. So, as I said, there were 4 bloody wars. 3.5, if you look at the last war, was not a full-scale war as such. And, and as I had mentioned, the Pakistan army is a strong army, but the Indian army is bigger. The two countries are nuclear powerhouses right now. But should there be a war between India and Pakistan on sheer numbers, most people would put their money on India coming out better. And I think Pakistan have recognized that. And they have stated very openly that the way they want to bring down India is to make them bleed by 1,000 cuts. So, since the mid-80s, the Kashmir problem the militancy in Kashmir started in 1983. Prior to that, Kashmir was a relatively stable state, relatively peaceful state. Never saw this much of violence as it has seen in the last 10, 15 years or 20 years. So Pakistan, realizing that they could not go to a full-fledged war with India, decided to start a proxy war. So they had these terror modules which they started supporting for carrying out their terrorist activities in different parts of India. Punjab is today it's one of the most prosperous states of India. There was a time in the mid-80s, and there was a danger that Punjab would go the Kashmir way. What was the reason behind the militancy in Punjab? Pakistan. This was around the time when Indira Gandhi was killed by the security personnel who were Sikhs. And this was around the time when the Sikh militancy was at its peak. So Pakistan has a very strong history of interfering in India for the last 20, 30 years. They tried direct interference through a war, they couldn't succeed. They started a proxy war, and both the countries are seeing the consequences of that until today. So, Atif had mentioned about wishes of the people not being taken into account. Here are some interesting statistics. Every time there has been a general election in Kashmir in India, the people of Kashmir have been threatened by the militant groups. And for the fear of the militant groups, people have never ventured out to vote. In the general elections in 2002, 98, 94, the voter turnout in Kashmir was probably in single digits, at the best 10 to 12%. In 2008, it started changing. Unprecedented. 55% voter turnout, despite the threat from militants. The funny aspect of Kashmir is the people who really want freedom are not fighting. Who supposedly want freedom are not fighting. It is the people who think that they want freedom are fighting on their behalf. So the reason for violence and militancy in Kashmir are not the people of Kashmir. They are the terrorist groups that is being sponsored by Pakistan. Pakistan occupies 1/3 of Kashmir. Have they ever cared to check what the people think of their rule there? A UN poll in 2004 revealed that 96% of the people living in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir want freedom from Pakistan. Human rights violation in Kashmir, is it a reality? Yes, it is a reality. But one needs to look behind the numbers. One really needs to look behind the numbers to understand. I'm not saying that there are no human rights violations done by the Indian paramilitary forces. There are. The Indian Army is culpable, but the Indian government has been taking action against the army officers who have been in violation of human rights. This is a 2008 report by UN. So people say that there are human rights violations in Kashmir. 45% of violations are by the militants. So the numbers don't tell you by whom the violations are by. They just say that 15,000 violations have happened this year or 20,000 violations have happened this year. 25% of violations have occurred in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And as I said, Indian military is culpable. But the human rights violations has been on the decline. Again, this is a very sensitive issue. Because the whole Kashmir issue is such a politically sensitive issue, it's very difficult to differentiate and define what constitutes human rights violations and what does not. So there have been various instances. In fact, there was a report